Hey, what's up, Summoners? I hope the new patch is treating you well. My name is Nathaning, and I'll be your host for your Korean builds for patch 11.15. In this series, we'll delve into some up-and-coming builds that you may or may not already be aware of. We cover builds for all 5 roles, so don't worry, we have something for everybody. So hit that sub button and let's jump right into the video. Kicking things off, let's run through 2 top lane builds. What's top lane solo queue without some ranged top laners to ruin some people's experiences? Well, we'll go ahead and start with Graves top. Even though if you play this, I won't respect you at all. But hey, LP's LP, right? After a recent round of buffs, Graves has found his way back onto Summoner's Rift. This isn't just in the jungle though. Extra attack damage was enough to spur a wave of Graves top players to start spamming him in solo queue. Well, to be more precise, this build has been gradually gaining popularity and it's finally hit a point breaking into the meta. So let me just run you through the build. First, you'll run Ignite alongside Teleport. Graves has decent mobility already with his E, and his W provides an additional layer of safety. After level 6, you can even throw his R in for its self knockback. Ignite's extra kill pressure can help you win those close fights, and it's especially effective against top laners with sustain built into their kits. Now let's go ahead and talk about the runes and the items. For runes, run Fleet Footwork or Conqueror, Presence of Mind, Legend Alacrity, Coup de Grace, Celerity, Gathering Storm, Double Adaptive Force, and your choice of a defensive rune. You can run Fleet Footwork in harder matchups for the extra sustain, while against less mobile enemies you're happy to fight head on, run Conqueror. For items, build Eclipse, Berserker's Grief, Black Cleaver, Wit's End, Death's Dance, and Titanic Hydra. This build provides a great amount of tankiness as well as damage. Eclipse provides a great deal of sustain, survivability, and even mobility. With all the bonus health this build provides, Graves is able to make better use of his E's bonus armor. As fights drag on, he'll stack the ability up and end up extremely tanky if his opponents can't burst him down. Even during the laning phase, this is extremely relevant. Since most top laners deal physical damage, the fact that Graves can gain bonus armor over the course of a fight is invaluable, and this is especially true since you'll also be able to reduce minion damage. One final strength Graves top has is his wave clear. He has no problem pushing in waves to either begin pressuring turrets, recall, or even roam. By the way guys, we have a ton of courses by pros like CoreJJ and Aframoon. On top of that, we have excellent coaches that can help you improve in a variety of ways, including champion mastery, macro play, and even matchups. Next, we have a second range top laner to talk about. Quinn has been a hated lane opponent since her release many years ago. Her high damage and the way that her E works makes her incredibly difficult to fight. She does a pretty great job of maintaining a safe distance from her enemies and can effectively poke them down as well. If you ever let her have her way, Quinn is able to roam for free and she'll no longer be an issue for just one lane, but the entire enemy team. For runes, use Electrocute, Sudden Impact, Zombie Ward, Ravenous Hunter, Legend Alacrity, Coup de Grace, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and your choice of a defensive rune. By the way, most Quinn players run Ignite for the extra kill pressure. Her ultimate alone provides enough map mobility, and you can actually make it to any fight as long as you leave early enough. For the build, you'll be starting with Tear of Goddess, then move into building Eclipse, Berserker's Grief, Mana Mew, Edge of Night, Hullbreaker, and a Guardian Angel. With the addition of Hullbreaker after its buff, you'll be able to clear turrets much faster than before. Quinn is already designed well enough to roam effectively regardless of her build. By throwing in Hullbreaker, you can choose to either commit to split pushing or instead roam and help your team out. In many cases, you can react to what your opponents do. If they leave you alone, keep going and maybe you'll eventually knock on the door to their nexus. If you're constantly met with an enemy stopping you, utilize Quinn's ultimate to move elsewhere and then just quickly pick off overextended enemies. That covers the top lane, so make sure you take a look at those builds one more time. We put them up on the screen for you, so take notes or a screenshot if you need. Next up is the jungle. First, let's start with Sejuani. Tank junglers might be making their comeback. Ironically, the builds that we'll be talking about won't actually use any tank mythic items. For the runes, you'll run Aftershock, Font of Life, Conditioning, Overgrowth, Cheap Shot, Ultimate Hunter, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Armor. Following this, the items are Everfrost, Defensive Boots, Thornmail, Anathema's Chains, Abyssal Mask, and Sonya's Hourglass. It's not the tankiest build, but you gain a decent amount of damage and extra crowd control from Everfrost. Since Sejuani has a ton of crowd control already built into her kit, it is basically a free lineup for a guaranteed root off of Everfrost. Alternatively, you can initiate with Everfrost to immobilize foes and then land your ultimate afterwards. With the addition of Anathema's Chains, Sejuani is looking significantly stronger. Since you reduce the tenacity of your target, you'll also be able to stunlock enemies for even longer than before. You have Sejuani's W, her ultimate, and even Everfrost to go ahead and keep the enemies stuck. If you're teamed up with strong melee divers like Irelia or Camille, enemies caught off guard by crowd control are as good as dead. Ultimately, this build is a bit more centered around damage as you'll also build Abyssal Mask as well as Thornmail to help you finish off those low enemies. Anyway, let's go ahead and take a quick break and let me ask you our question of the day. What's your favorite new item from this season? With the addition of Anathema's Chains, I think that one must be mine. While it's simple, it's unique, and I love the fact you're able to choose a specific enemy champion to single out. Even tanks who rely purely on utility can now access an item to make them a more menacing threat. Anyway, that's my answer. Let me know about yours in the comments down below. Next up, we have a build for Jungle Poppy. This is a more aggressive build that actually ends up with you dealing a decent amount of damage. First, you'll run Teleport over Flash. Poppy's counter ganks are very potent, and if you or your teammates get deep wards in, Poppy is an excellent side lane diver. There's a ton of pressure when you're under a turret, especially because it's so close to the walls. This is almost a free stun for Poppy, and the only way that your opponent can avoid this is by standing out in the open, further away from their turret. Anyway, for the runes, you'll be running Dark Harvest, Cheap Shot, Zombie Ward, Relentless Hunter, Magical Footwear, Cosmic Insight, Double Adaptive Force, and Armor. Dark Harvest as well as Cheap Shot can add a decent chunk of damage, making Poppy's early game much more potent. In addition, you can run Relentless Hunter to help you out with your initial engage. As long as you can get in range for that first E, you're set. Cosmic Insight is quite valuable as well because of Teleport's ridiculously long cooldown. For items, build Divine Sunderer, Defensive Boots, Dead Man's Plate, Thornmail, Abyssal Mask, and either Gargoyle Stone Plate or Death's Dance as your last item. Divine Sunderer is a surprisingly good buy on Poppy because of her Q short cooldown in the mid to late game. The built-in % health damage alongside that extra damage from Divine Sunderer will allow Poppy players to use this build to quickly shred through the tanks as well as health stacking fighters. Even against squishies, the combination of runes and items provide enough extra damage to make Poppy a threat that can't be ignored. And that's it for the jungle builds, so make sure you take a look on the screen for a recap of them. Moving forward, we have the mid lane. Remember when Recon mid was a thing? Well, it's back up with more of a focus on utility rather than damage. You'll run Teleport as you're going to be focusing more on making plays across the map than solo kills. For runes, run Unsealed Spellbook, Perfect Timing, Minion Dematerializer, Cosmic Insight, Sudden Impact, Ultimate Hunter, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and a Defensive Rune. The reason you run Attack Speed is for some last hitting assistance as you'll otherwise struggle. Securing farm is essential, and like any mid laner, you don't want to fall behind. Minion Dematerializer is equally important. Since your W is your only source of wave clear, some extra assistance also goes a long way. For items, build Everfrost, Ionian Boots of Lucidity, Zonya's Hourglass, Horizon Focus, Void Staff, and Rabadon's Death Cap. Towards the end game, you'll start hitting hard, but early on the main focus is crowd control and enabling you as an initiator. Everfrost assists your engages while Zonya's acts to help you stall. After jumping into the entire enemy team, you're likely going to be the main target of several enemies, mainly because you're also taunting them. Similarly to champions like Kennen and Lissandra, you'll want to activate Zonyas to stall for your team and look for an escape route, or wait for your cooldowns to go ahead and get a further and better engage. Next is Lilia mid. After some recent massive changes, Lilia has seen a massive increase in her jungle win rate. Anytime a jungler gets buffed, you have to watch out because they often end up seeing play in solo lanes as well. And that's what's up with Lilia, as the extra combat power has left her a far more competent laner than before. For runes, run Dark Harvest, Taste of Blood, Eyeball Collection, Ravenous Hunter, Biscuit Delivery, Time Warp Tonic, Double Adaptive Force, and your choice of a defensive rune. I want to stress the importance of Time Warp Tonic on Lilia. You really need both parts of the rune. The additional movement speed is crucial to how Lilia likes to play, and a burst of sustain can really help in a close fight. Being faster than your opponent is crucial when playing Lilia, as this will allow you to weave in and out of a fight at your own pace. Next up are the items. Build Liandry's Anguish, Boots of Lucidity, Demonic Embrace, Zonya's Hourglass, Cosmic Drive, and a Rabadon's Death Cap. Nothing too special about the items. Lilia has a pretty solid wave clear as she's able to spam her Q, and the added sustain that she now has against champions makes her better at 1v1s. While the mid lane is short, you can still use this to your advantage. If things are rough, push your wave quickly and go for a recall. You may be able to return to lane much faster than if you were top. Additionally, if you're ever able to push your opponent out of lane, you can always look for roams and pretend that you were a jungler all along. Anyway, we really love this pick and we can't help but to fawn over it. Anyway, that covers up the mid lane. We'll put up the builds up for you guys one more time. Make sure you take a last look as we move on to the bottom lane to wrap things up. While we don't have too many builds left to cover, we've left one of the more exciting ones until the end. Samira has a new build that's been pretty crazy. Rather than a marksman mythic item, you'll be using Stridebreaker. We also suggest running Summoner Exhaust and letting your support run Heal or Ignite. The rest of the build is pretty standard, so let me run you guys through the items and runes real quick. For the runes, you'll be running Conqueror, Presence of Mind, Legend Bloodline, Last Stand, Taste of Blood, Ravenous Hunter, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and a defensive rune. Next, you'll build Stridebreaker, Defensive Boots, The Collector, Bloodthirster, Infinity Edge, and either a Guardian Angel or Mortal Reminder. The reason Stridebreaker works for Samira is that she's already so mobile. When you want to jump in for a kill, you can heavily slow them with Stridebreaker and make it nearly impossible for them to get away. The stat line it provides also complements Samira's aggressive playstyle exceptionally well. For once, somebody gets the most out of the attack speed that Stridebreaker provides, and health is by no means a bad stat on Samira when you constantly live on the verge of death. Stridebreaker can also double up as a self-peeling item. Since you have to cast it while moving, you're able to slow down divers while you try and create some distance. For supports, it's no surprise that we need to talk about Tomek. Following his mini rework, we didn't have the best results on him. However, he was buffed heavily and is once again doing quite decently. He's been seeing some play once again, and we'll run you through the build that most people are building on him in Korea. The runes you'll be running are Unsealed Spellbook, Perfect Timing, Futures Market, Cosmic Insight, Font of Life, Revitalize, Attack Speed, Armor, and your choice of a defensive rune. Font of Life is a great choice on Tomek. The constant slows that you apply enables a ton of ally healing. In both the laning phase as well as team fights, this extra health can really be all the difference. Next, build Locket of the Iron Solari, Boots of Swiftness, Thornmail, Anathema's Chains, and Knights of Al for your items. You'll provide a decent amount of utility with the setup. Like other melee supports, running Locket as well as having your ultimate is a great way to protect allies. We put those builds up one last time for you guys. Make sure to take a last look at that recap. With that, we've covered our Korean builds for patch 11.15. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. Also, make sure to check out the description for a link to join our Discord. Come be a part of our community, and I'd personally love to see you there. Anyway, my name has been Nathan Ng, and as usual, stay healthy, stay safe, and have a wonderful day. Peace.